So foreshadowing is a literary device used to hint at events that are yet to come, and also to keep readers guessing. There are a lot of different functions of foreshadowing. The presentation of details, characters, or incidents in a narrative are sometimes used so that later events are prepared for or shadowed forth. And there are various ways to create foreshadowing. A writer can use character dialogues to hint at what may occur in the future. In addition, an event or an action in the story may throw a hint into the reader's future about the events or actions. Even the work of a chapter or title can act as a clue that suggests what's going to happen. Here's an example of foreshadowing from Star Wars. Maybe a little bit of an exaggeration of what actually happened, but there's Anakin Skywalker. Think of a Wild Wild West saloon as an example. The hero walks in and orders a milk. Over in the corner, the villain watches him drink. As the hero leaves, the baddie spits on the floor. And that's it. But we know that their next meeting will probably not be quite so uneventful. Remember that foreshadowing in fiction creates an atmosphere of suspense in a story so that the readers are interested to know more. It's a great device for hooking readers into reading the rest of your story. An example of foreshadowing in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is right at the very beginning. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. So think about an old man sitting at a desk looking at his stamp collection. When he opens the drawer for his magnifying glass, his fingers brush against a revolver. He finds the magnifying glass and closes the drawer. Now this incident may seem rather innocuous, but it's a device used to foreshadow what could possibly happen later. Here are a few other examples to think of. I'll give you the example, and you think about what effect is created. The final graveyard flower is blooming, and its smell drifts through their house, speaking gently the names of their dead. And that's foreshadowing death. Here's another. The evening was still, suddenly cool. A cool breeze started blowing and made a windy night. And this is just foreshadowing a change in the weather or the thunderstorm that's coming. Here's another. The most awful thing happened on a stormy evening. The battle between good and evil started. This is foreshadowing danger. So foreshadowing, in H.G. Wells' A Time Machine, he says, but a singular sense of impending calamity that should indeed have served me as a warning drove me onward. Makes a book much more worth reading. Here's another example of the magpie. The first thing Mary saw when she pulled back the curtains was a solitary magpie sitting on the fence. She waited for a second bird to appear, but no magpie came. So this one requires a little bit of background knowledge, but any reader who knows the magpie rhyme, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, will immediately suspect the worst for Mary, even if Mary herself is untroubled by the sighting and soon forgets about it. And this is what's beautiful about foreshadowing. Not everybody will pick up on it, so it can be almost a secret code or a message between the writer and the reader. In terms of weather and setting, here's how Ernest Hemingway famously foreshadows an early death in the opening line of A Farewell to Arms. The leaves fell early that year. It's very simple, but it's very effective. I'll do a few more examples, and you see if you can figure out what effect is created. Mary pulled back the curtains and saw some of the magpies sitting on the wall. This foreshadows gossip. Here's another. They thought there would be no more bodies. However, they could not believe the thought. This is foreshadowing a murder. In the middle of the night, the father hears the back door opening. He rushes to check on his kids, but a masked intruder is blocking the way with a knife. And of course, this is foreshadowing a threat. So there's all kinds of ways that foreshadowing can be used. It's a way for a presenter to share a promise with an audience. I'd also like to tell you about the example from Romeo and Juliet, a very well-known text in which in Act 2, Scene 2, it says, life were better ended by their hate than death prorogued, wanting of thy love. So in the balcony scene, Juliet's concerned about Romeo's safety as she fears that her kinsman may catch him, and Romeo says in these above lines that he would rather have her love and die sooner than not obtain her love and die later. So eventually, he gets her love and dies for her love too. So it's your turn now. To conclude this lecture, I'd like you to find 3 quotations from your novel that foreshadow future events. Find those as examples, and of course you'll have to find quotations from earlier in the text that support events that happen later in the text. They could be subtle, they could be overt, they could be anything from titles to character names to events to pieces of clothing, descriptions, anything you can find. And lastly, to add to that, I'd like you to think about if you were using foreshadowing to hint that a character would die in a story, how would you do it? And remember that there are very good examples of foreshadowing and there are poor examples of foreshadowing. So think of a very subtle way that you can do it without being too overt and try to avoid cliches. And generally, the function of foreshadowing is to build anticipation in the minds of readers about what might happen next, and this adds dramatic tension to a story. It's very deliberately employed to create suspense, especially in mystery novels, usually by giving false clues or red herrings to distract readers. Moreover, foreshadowing can make extraordinary and bizarre events appear credible, as the events are predicted beforehand so that the readers are mentally prepared for them.